And growing up, like, I guess I didn't know that it was a refugee camp because everybody, it was lit, the refugee camp was it was good. I remember the kids, like, we got along, and mind you, this is like a camp, and of course, like, it's different because our parents didn't get along necessarily because there's that lack of language and culture is different, and little things as far as like body language, I remember would stir drama and fights and conflict. In one culture, petting the head is like a symbol of like being apologetic and saying I'm really sorry. And in other cultures, it's actually belittling someone. So you can kind of see how that went over you. So just growing up, I remember seeing how our parents, like, even though I was 6, I could honestly say, okay, some of the stuff that's happening is very avoidable. Because if us, the children, found this common ground and we found a way to be not just tolerant, I don't even know what that word really means, because we had genuine love for each other, respect. We didn't see each other as kids who came from different backgrounds or who didn't believe in the same religion or didn't come from the same race. We saw each other as, okay, that's my little sister and that's my brother and that's the kids that I like to hang out with. So early on, the refugee camp taught me this sense of community. And I guess when you don't have anything, when we're stripped of our identities, our, like anything monetary, we learn to lean on each other and we learn to appreciate culture. We tend to, respect people for their values, and what they bring to the table as far as like their ideas, how their mind works, and not just like materialistic things, So it's funny because just coming from that background, early on, like, early on, I remember just UNICEF, I remembered UNHCR, I remember the organizations that helped my family. And at 6, I made that promise to myself. I said, I don't know what this lady, there's this blonde woman who came to the camp every few months to come and speak with the families. And I remember thinking, I don't know what that woman does. I don't know what her job title is, but I want to be like her. When I grow up, I want to have that position. So you can kind of see where like identity and like having trouble from being that 6-year-old child to coming to America. It was like a whole different challenge. Of course, there's amazing things that happen, but that transition wasn't the easiest. And that's one thing I always bring up in my talks is just because somebody's from a refugee camp, it's not a sad story always. Now let me tell you guys a little bit of the obstacles. The obstacles were food. Of course, it's still a refugee camp. We didn't always have food. The wells, there were long lines. Again, conflict within like parents and even race, right? Because it was a Turkana district, Kakuma. And I remember even when I was 6, people would be like, to scare the kids, to keep us safe, to keep us from wandering out of the camp, they'd be like, you guys need to be careful because this is a Turkana district. Turkana people hurt people, so you want to stay, you want to stay close to home. So now it's funny because I live in America and I hear some of those same stereotypes about, okay, stay away from Muslims because they hurt people. Do you know what I'm saying? So I guess from age 6, I just had this strong understanding of when we don't know something, we tend to fear it. So coming to America, the first obstacle was learning English. My mom sent me to school and I literally came back and she was like, okay, read this book to me. And I remember we had a radio, believe it or not, in the camp. So there's this song that always played. So I remember I picked up the book and I was like, no matter what I do, all I think about is you. And my mom picked up on it because she was like, we all like, English is starting to sound all the same. She's like, matter of fact, I'm starting to learn. So of course I got busted, but it was just like, it was a struggle because my mom had these like unattainable expectations for us to catch up, and not just catch up, she wanted us to exceed. Matter of fact, she wanted us teaching the class. And it's like, hold on. This kid just got here, okay? We gotta start from A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. And that was another thing, like our camp had a nursery, but we never got past the letter E because it was kids that always like came, and then, families always move, so it's hard to keep that same group and teach them, like a curriculum. So we never got past like the letter E, hello, goodbye, that was about it. Very easy, right? So back to, okay, so from Kakuma, I'm sorry, I'm Somali, so we tend to bounce, and then come back to the point. Just throwing that out there. But follow. So from Kakuma to St. Louis, Missouri, that was how we came to America. And it wasn't easy. Like, we got our documents, but there's corruption, so we didn't actually, we were supposed to go to Australia, and then that didn't work out. But I do believe that, God has a plan for us, and, sometimes we just have to be patient. When one door closes, be patient and just trust that He has a better plan for you. Because we stayed in the camp for a few more years, it's hard, and refugees, we're the most vulnerable people because a lot of the times they don't speak the language. They can't go and find a lawyer. They don't have anybody backing them up or being that voice for them. So it's very easy for people to take advantage of them. But again, God has a better plan, right? So we ended up coming to America. And I think, you know what, I could have had an Australian accent, so it's like, did we really though? But we came to this beautiful country, the land of opportunity, and it's said many times, this is the land for dreamers. This is where dreams come true, and everybody's chasing that American dream. And that's exactly what my family came here for. And I can't even thank the people who I probably will never get to know who helped us, from the social workers to the people in the community, just helping us catch up, St. Louis, how earlier I told you, like, the kids back in the camp, we got along, it was like a family dynamic? Well, it wasn't necessarily the same in St. Louis because I noticed the boys played with the boys, the girls played with the girls, and even within those groups, there was like 3 girls, 2 girls, the tall girls, cliques, And that was something very new to me because growing up, we all played together, so that weird concept of you're kids, but you're all not together at the same time. It felt very foreign to me. And I wasn't learning. That's the other thing, I was not learning. The school that we were placed in didn't have an ESL program. It didn't have an ELL program. And for those of you who don't know what those programs are, it's a necessity to have in schools because how else are these kids who don't speak English, how else are they expected to catch up? So that was very difficult. Every day I would go to school, I would sit down, I would listen, and then I'd go home, and we didn't know any better. I thought that's how American schools were. It seemed normal to me because even back home, we never got past the letter E. So to me, I was just very grateful to be in the school that provided us lunch and we had recess, but I didn't know there's something better. But my mom, because she's Somali and we word of mouth, they were like, yo, Kala inte imo. So she ended up going to Minnesota. Because Minnesota is a great state, especially to help you catch up. We have a lot of great social programs. The school system is very, very good. And immediately I was placed into ESL. And that was very helpful because, again, you learn, it's like baby steps, but things become easier. Obviously, I had struggles in school. Unlike some of my friends, I couldn't go home to a mom or dad that could help me with my homework. But then I found parents at school. That's something my mom always beat into my head was whoever is your teacher, that becomes your parent. You know, when you're out of my house, whoever that person is, that is your mom, that is your dad. You know, that is a very cultural thing, I feel like, to have that much respect for like the elders. But early on, and my teachers took me in. They stayed after school when they didn't have to. Shout out to my second grade teacher. Like, my English is still shaky, but she tried. So they stayed after school with me. They would pull me out of recess when I needed it. And again, these are people who lived in America for generations. They're not Somali, they're not Muslim. They owed my family and I absolutely nothing. But through the kindness of their hearts, they've still found a way to help this child. You know, they knew I didn't have that support at home to help me academically, so they put it upon themselves to lead me and to like help me catch up. So I am very like grateful that I had that, but I understand that's not always the case for everyone. You know, I think back to like middle school, and you know, I was having like a talk with one of my girlfriends, and she's African American, and it was also the same time that I was trying to figure out my identity and where I stand, and just placing myself or even giving myself a label. Because in school, like, did you guys learn to check African American? Like, what do you check? You know, because on one hand, yes, I'm African, you know, I'm a woman of color, but also I don't claim African American because I understand that's their culture. You know, I claim Somali American, and I feel like it'd be wrong to take that from them, you know? Sorry, I was like, ooh, they're coming for me. I was like, triggered. No, but see, that's stuff that we don't have conversations about. And I wish we had more conversations, because there is no right or wrong, I understand that. But it's also, how do you identify yourself? And I feel like a lot of us can relate to like finding your identity. Sorry. I mean, that's a struggle that all across the board, everyone kind of, you know, I guess we all know. So anyways, it was just, for me, middle school, what made it even harder was that was also the same time that you're figuring yourself out, you're figuring, Aussie, nobody knows. But you know, you're a young girl, you're growing up, you're like, okay, I'm still American, I'm a teenager, but what do I claim really, right? And then to make things like, sometimes middle school I find is like when everybody's kind of mean. So overcoming when people tease you about the hijab, you know, it can kind of make you almost want to step back and say, oh, I don't want to wear it because I don't want to be the butt of the joke. You know, when girls would be like, oh, you have like an alien head. And instead of just coming out and saying, oh, this is my hijab, this is my hair actually, I didn't have that maturity level, so I came crying home, or I would say something back. But my mom was very good about putting me back in my place and just explaining to me, you know, she was very honest. And I feel like that's, again, it might be an immigrant thing, because all my friends say the same thing about their parents, but she was like, we paid a small price to come to this country. You know, sometimes people won't understand you, sometimes you're gonna have to explain yourself, but that is the price we paid, and it's worth it 100%. That's what she'd always remind me. Like, think about all the great things that came from coming here. You know, you're the minority, but at the same time, your situation here is 100 times better than what it would have been. You know? So that's something like to kind of think about. And she'd always remind me of this story, and because I was the biggest fob. I'm still a fob. But she just reminded me about when I was like, I think I was around maybe 2nd, 3rd grade, and I came home once, and it was like one of my classmates had this super platinum blonde hair, and I was so confused. I was shook. I was like, how is her hair this bright? I wasn't getting it, because what grows out of my head is not the same, you know? So anyways, I came home like, Mom, I figured it out. This girl eats a lot of bananas, and that's why her hair is yellow. And obviously, that's wrong, because if you know Somalis, we eat bananas breakfast, lunch, dinner. is that blonde? But that's the mentality. When you don't understand something, you create scenarios, you try to make sense of it. So she always reminds me of that story. And she's like, remember how foolish you were, Chad? Like, that's, don't be quick to condemn your classmates who are saying you look like an alien, or, like, why your head so big, I was like, okay, Somali moms will never tell you to your face you're the victim. It's always, what did you do? But I'm very grateful. Now that I'm 20 years old, I'm very grateful that I had that, because it forced me to step back and be like, okay, what is really going on? And I think everybody needs to have a little bit of that, where you can't take it personal. You kind of have to, even with online, that's something that always comes up with when I talk at schools. It's how do you deal with like negative comments online? And what I do is I think of it as, oh, this person that's commenting, they must be talking about someone else because you don't know me. So I just kind of put someone else in that position, because I don't want to get butthurt about anything. So you can't take it personal. You have to just kind of step back, look at the whole picture, and really, really see what's going on. Because a lot of times people don't know. We think everybody knows, but they don't know. And think about the population in this country. A lot of times, people have never even met another Muslim person, much less someone who's wearing a hijab. And then you add on to the media and everything that's been portrayed. You have to almost have empathy for people and just acknowledge, okay, I shouldn't just excuse people's feelings, because what if that person is genuinely fearful? So that's kind of how I went through middle school and high school. And high school, for my town, the Somali population just jumped overnight. And that was also around the same time that I noticed there's tension within the community. And I made a conscious choice. I'm like, listen, I sat myself down and I was literally like, okay, I'm about to enter 9th grade. I want to have fun. I want to go in open-minded. And this time, I want to have as many friends from as many different backgrounds as I can, I don't want to just limit myself to the people who I could relate to or who look the closest to me, because that's a very boring place to be at, I feel like my friends have taught me so much, and I've taught them so much about my own culture, my values, and likewise, they've done the same for me. So that's what I did, and it was that simple. It was just that conscious choice of, no, I'm not going to walk into a room thinking, oh, I'm the only hijabi, or, I have to limit myself to friends who, are X, Y, and Z. And that has brought me a lot of success, I'd say, in high school, because my classmates really liked me, and by senior year, I was my town's first homecoming Muslim queen.
Wow.
And really, that's the other thing. How do you embrace the American culture while still maintaining your own culture? And there's not a right or wrong. I feel like a lot of times there's it's a give or take. But why can't you give and take? So I was a part of homecoming. I did things a little different, obviously. The first thing that came up was the homecoming dance, and my mom was like, you can take the crown, but you're not going to that dance. She's like, dance at home, turn on the TV. She's like, you missed the point, Mom. But, and you guys are gonna find that a lot of times, it's gonna be that same thing for you. Even though you can participate, you could be a part of that experience, you're gonna find yourself doing things your own way. And there's nothing wrong with that, There's nothing wrong with that. People think it's compromising, but I think it's just going with what you're most comfortable with. There's not a right or wrong. And even college, I look back, and representation was something that was always important to me. So I took it upon myself. I was like, I'm not going to sit and wait for somebody to represent me. I'm going to go and I'm going to be a part of my student senate, because my college means a lot to me, my education means a lot to me, and it's important that first generation students see somebody who looks like them, who's able to still be in office and still be a part of that college experience. You don't have to go to all these college frats. You can still get the college experience, doing it your own way. And I did that, and then I also stumbled across the Miss Minnesota USA pageant, and I did that too. That was amazing, guys. Like, talk about life-changing. Again, like, I went into it thinking I want to make friends. I want to treat it like a sleepover. It's what a great time to meet women from all over my state, women who are different than I am, women who are pursuing fields in education, science, medicine, you name it, and finding that common place and being a part of that space. I found that to be very beautiful, and I wanted to give it a try. Pageantry isn't in my family lineage, it's not in my culture, but it's something that's within this culture, and it's something that I chose to embrace and to try out. And talk about life-changing. My life changed right away, Before I knew it, I was flying out to New York for the first time, and just being a part of another industry, even though the pageant was my first take on fashion. By the way, I have ADHD, I swear, but that walk, oh my gosh, I was like talking to my manager, like, write that down, write that down. That was amazing. But that was literally like the pageant, it's like walking, strutting, like just showing that you're confident and you're, like, this is me kind of thing, And just being in that space was like my first take on the fashion industry. And going back to like representation, again, this is a girl who's never had the privilege of flipping through a magazine to find somebody or to find a picture that resembled her. And this year, less than 1 year, I can proudly say I've been on the cover of 6 magazines. So, if I could give you any tips, I would say stay true to yourself. Even though I have this privilege of traveling and seeing the world and doing these incredible things, I still know my boundaries. I have a woman chaperoning me at all times. Girl, my brain was already buffering, but now it's like. But I do things my own way, and it's okay. I found that the industry has been very welcoming, from giving me my own private, like changing areas, to just accommodating. English was not my first or second language, so thank you. But accommodating me, and I think that's, again, another important part. You could still be a part of these spaces. You don't have to necessarily conform. I'm willing to try out a different color. I'm willing to try out a different fabric, but I'm not gonna start losing my values. I think there's a way to meet people halfway.